We went up to Quebec because they have been in this fight now for several years. About 2006 is when they started to really have some problems. And we couldn't think of any better way to find out how much things had changed over time than go up there and see how they were going through the process, monitoring the thing, deciding to spray or not, what they sprayed with, the dynamics of the spray process and all that. We went to Quebec to find out. You could fill that in with all kinds of crazy things, but I made my own list. And the first one is to find out what their philosophy was, the provincial government, on spraying or not spraying. And up there, 90% of the forest land is owned by the province. And so they run the show. We went over their detection protocols, and they are more sophisticated. The protocols they're using now is they're really looking at some very specific times to spray on trees, more so than we used to. We used to have a broader band and didn't require knowing quite as much, as quick as you needed to know. But they've done a lot of work on protocols to sample, to find out where they want to spray and or not spray. But what they've done is they've decided how much wood they need to keep all the mills running over the next forever. And they've identified the land base they need to keep those mills going. And they've committed to keep that land protected. One thing they have up here, they have this, it's a SOPFIM, SOPFIM. It's a private organization, but it's fed with provincial money and then private money. But they make a lot of decisions, this group, on particularly on the end of the spraying. The government still is the one doing a lot of the sampling and saying, yeah, it's bad. But ultimately, these folks decide whether they're going to spray or cut. Preliminary planning from aerial surveys, that's just what they start out with. That's their initial effort to find out what's happening in a mega sense. Spray and no spray decision points. The next slide after this is kind of going to be interesting for you. This is what they've come up as a protocol on whether to spray or not. Ours would be probably much different. To begin with, we don't even know if we're going to spray, but if we were going to, this is what they came up with. And it's just an interesting protocol from the sense that there is one out there and someone's thought it through, there's a logic to it, and it's something we can throw around and talk about when we get down to the nasty businesses, or are we going to do it or not. One thing they're doing right now that was interesting is they're down to, they have to be greater than 150 hectares, multiply that's about 500 acres. That's not very big. And they thought when the epidemic got bigger, they'd have to start dropping people out. They're not going to go chase 500-acre blocks. That's going to have to be salvaged. But right now they're chasing the little blocks, but that will probably have to end. And they're only dealing with the new foliage, which is really tricky. The new foliage, stuff that comes out this year. And if they think they're going to have greater than 50% defoliated, that's what they're going to spray. That's the area they're looking at to protect, the total area that they're looking at to protect. And then they start to break that down. The green area is what they've accepted, and the yellow areas, they're almost there. They think it's going to be what they want to do. But then the red areas, they've still got they're a long way from making a decision on, but it may come in to be part of the spray area. So they're working their way in as this thing gets bigger on where they need to do their work. But they've identified that green area is pretty large, and then the yellow is pretty definite they'll have to be there. Then the red is they're still, and you notice the red is towards the east, which makes sense because the epicenter of the two budworm outbreaks are Bay Como. If anybody's ever gone fishing in Quebec with an airplane knows where that is. That's where you fill your tanks if you don't hit a mountain. And then northwest, that's St. John, and the epidemic over there. So it's moving this way. So obviously they wouldn't know much about this because it hasn't got there to any extent. Another thing that's interesting is no one in their right mind, all the experts said that the budworm epidemic would never start along the North Shore. It wasn't ready. It's just like our stuff down here, out in back of Portage. So there wasn't going to be an outbreak there. But I'll give you my theory, is that this didn't blow in from anywhere else, that's self-imposed, self-induced. You know, an epidemic has to start somewhere. And as far as I'm concerned, it started there, it didn't blow in. Okay, treatment priorities. That's how they determine if they're going to spray or not, and they have it in priorities. Now this, don't try to memorize. But this is what they gave us an example of when they decided to spray. They set up, it's very complicated, and this is what happens in a regular day. People are getting up at 2 o'clock. You know, just like anybody in here have a herbicide? It's just like a typical day of herbicide. You wake up at a ridiculous time and you go to bed when you're dead. You know, same thing. But they have this protocol all worked out, and they've used it for several years, and it works. But they're using small planes, which helps them get around good. They're only using about 10 right now. They use these little ag planes. But one thing about it, they're only spraying 1.5 liters per acre. Is that right?
Something like that.
And the big ag tractors can haul 2,000 liters. So when you go out, I mean, you're gone for a while. So which means you can cover a lot of acreage, which doesn't mean it's cheap. It runs about $80 for 2 sprays, and they're doing 1.7 sprays. That just shows a block that they've separated. Okay. Yeah, that's a good distinction between what they're going to spray and not spray, isn't it? When can we expect a significant outbreak? They never really got down as low as we did on the budworm population. You can see other people are in the same boat we are. New Brunswick up north, they've got populations. There's also defoliation south of the St. Lawrence now in Quebec. We haven't got any larval here, but we've certainly got moths, quite a few moths. And I don't know if we say this later on, but it's located in the same place that the outbreak started 35 years ago. It's between Blackstone Siding and Knowles Corner, about. Oh, this shows what's going on up there. This year they had 5.6 million acres that were defoliated. Then it breaks it down, 1.9 million of severe. They sprayed about they kept telling us 500,000 acres, and Dave looked at the figures, and it only comes up to 2.45 thousand. 250,000. That's the defoliation. And then they show you the yellow areas, the areas they're really looking hard to see where else it's going. And this gets into intensity, light, medium, and then significant. Serious. Yeah. That takes quite a bit of work to get those gradations. You know, it's a lot of sampling to get that stuff. And that's where they sprayed in 2012, those black areas. And I think we got another one that shows it a little better. Yeah, there it is. So it shows you at Bay Como again, raising heck, right through there. And then over to St. Jean or John, whatever it is. Okay. Some people like data. Some of the geeks in the crowd, right, Peter? Yeah. But this shows it on histogram, and you can see things have kind of escalated. Yeah, I think that's exponential almost. And these are the figures. There seems to be a 10-year lag where when you start to pick it up and when all heck breaks loose. And you see over there in 93 they had very little, you know, the total and the breakdowns. And then you get down here, 204, it really blew when it went. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. So you have some time to get ready, and you hope. And then when it's here, though, it's in here in good shape. We did some pheromone trapping in Maine, New Brunswick, Quebec, 2012. You know, I guess we're still assembling the data, but it is no worse than last year, but there's some clusters that are. And that's the way it happens. Quebec's on its way to see what's going to happen next year. Brunswick's monitoring, and so we didn't do anything this winter, but we probably will next winter, and we'll be sampling more next summer too in the Oxbow-Garfield area. So we hope we're somewhere on top of the situation and can move along with it as it gets more severe. What can we do to prepare? Vulnerability of our stands, and there were 2 people that predicted the North Shore was going to blow out when it did, almost to the day. One of them's out in Vancouver somewhere, I guess, and another one is still available. And, and also the Quebec folks said they would send down their best intuitive person. And we're gonna give them a day or two, looking at things from the air with a helicopter. And we're gonna update the Budworm statute, but not in the order it's up there. I wanna know more about this creature before I go over to the legislature and update the statute, because I wanna know a lot more than they do, and I want a plan. But that plan has to come from you folks and some other people. It can't just come from the Forest Service. Frankly, I think our role is, and I've had several people call me from the industry, is who's gonna lead the parade? Well, I guess we're gonna lead the parade. But our role is gonna be much diminished from the last time. You're not gonna see us out there running the spray program. That's not gonna happen. That's gonna have to happen in some other way. But we certainly can do the monitoring and take people up to a certain point where they can step in. But there's no way that I could see that we would do the other part that we did last time.